Hey everyone, I'm Sandy Rains, and I am the musical director of Musicians for Social Justice. I'm really excited to be welcoming you all to such a beautiful experience where we get to experience Armenian culture and learn about Armenian history, presented to you by Miss Fani Apanosyan. Hopefully, I'm saying your name right. I don't want to do you injustice. Yeah, and hopefully, we just look forward to a beautiful presentation. I'm going to be learning a lot today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that a lot. All right. So if we're ready to go, I would love to begin. All right. All right. So hello, everyone, or as we would say in Armenian, Parev Sireni Ժողովուրդ. Thank you so much for your attendance tonight. I have been looking forward to this evening for quite some time, and I'm delighted that you can all join me here. Again, I want to especially thank Dr. Freeman and the MSJ board for having me here and inviting me tonight. So before we get started, I wanted to explain a little bit about the tool that I'm using called Pear Deck. As most of your education majors are working in the education field, I felt that it was most important to use and model such a tool, especially in our era of remote learning. So I've posted a link to the chat box. You should all see that by now. If you could please click on that, it's going to open up to a new tab, open up to a new window. And I'm just going to waiting for students. A new tab should open up called joinpd.com. It may ask you to sign in with an email, but I don't think it should. Just has everyone been able to connect? Normally I would see the participants coming in. Let's try that again. Okay, so I was asking you to sign in with an email. Just please do that. It's not going to spam you or anything. It's just so that it can sign you in with, so that it has your name. Awesome, thank you. All right. Actually, now it's telling me it's having technical issues. The joys of remote and online. Let me try this one more time. I apologize. Okay. Dr. Freeman, is it working for you? I'm not sure. That it's working. Okay. So no worries, we do have a plan B if this is not going to work and cooperate with us tonight. So what I'll do instead is just share my screen. Okay. So if I can share screen. Awesome. There we are. Nope, it's not wanting to work with me today. I apologize, folks. I don't know if my Wi-Fi, it's my Wi-Fi. Let's see. I'm not sure when I can't present. All right, let me stop sharing just for a second and see if I can figure this out real quick. I actually went to the tech department today to make sure that my computer was in tip-top shape. All right. Let's see if I can do this again. Okay. See if I can try this one more time with the Pear Deck. Go ahead and click on that link if that works. Okay. Everyone clicks on that link. Does that work now? There we go. Okay. Awesome. All right. Sorry, everyone. There we go. So I will start my class now. Okay. So the reason why I wanted to use Pear Deck is to have a little bit more interaction. I've pasted a link, yes. So at this time, you should see a screen that has my title slide on it. Mm-hmm. Awesome, okay. So what Pear Deck allows me to do is to create a more interactive experience so that you as my students can engage with my slides right on the screen. So throughout the presentation, I'll have spots where I'll ask you a question, you'll respond to a prompt, you can click on a link to watch a video, and you'll be able to do this all on this website. So I advise that you actually minimize the Zoom video and the Pear Deck tab so that they're side by side. So I'll give you a few minutes to get settled with that now. Awesome. Okay, so as most of you are aware, I will be presenting on the Armenian Genocide, which is a deeply personal topic to me and something that has influenced my culture and identity for better and for worse. I've advocated for the cause my whole life, and it is because of this passion of fighting against the injustice done to my people, I have often engaged in many meaningful conversations and discussions regarding inclusion and culture, which brings me to my title, Teaching with Girk, or in Armenian, passion. So my goal for this program is to not only teach about this horrific event through art and performance, but to show how we as teachers, it is vital to talk about this, and it should be considered when planning for inclusion. So again, a quick introduction of myself before we get started. I attended Seton Hall University, where I got my undergrad in English and journalism, followed by getting my master's degree at Montclair State in teaching for secondary and special education. After I graduated Montclair, I began working at Pascagoula Hills High School as a teacher of special education and English, and this is my third year of teaching. I also advise our school newspaper, as well as our newly established Armenian club, which I will talk about a little later on. So last year, I took courses to be certified in Holocaust and Genocide Studies, which combined two of my passions together, which is education and justice against genocide. And it was through the program where I met Dr. Freeman. In regards to my Armenian background, I've always been involved in the community, specifically through the arts. My dance group in particular has offered me many years of travel and engagement with other Armenian communities around the world, including Armenia. So I'll be showing one of our dances tonight. Aside from helping out in my local community, I've also volunteered in Armenia as I worked as an ESL teacher. So I've broken up tonight's workshop into 4 parts, each of which will answer these 4 essential questions. Again, my goal is to model how, as an educator, you can effectively speak about culture and genocide through art in order to promote a more inclusive classroom setting. So my first question is, in what ways can a teacher promote inclusivity through their personal culture and experience? So as an English teacher, I like written narratives. And so the way that I would best express my culture is through writing. The next slide is a short story that I wrote, which I will now read to all of you. A pregnant mother, a worried father, a 7-year-old sister, and a 4-year-old boy are told that they have one day to pack their belongings and leave. They are coming. Assuming it will take 2 days to reach the Syrian border, they pack only essentials: food, a change of clothes, and some money. They lock the door to their home, leaving priceless treasures and memories behind. They leave their village of Aintab in the dead of night in a horse-drawn caravan, only to be discovered by Kurdish soldiers. The soldiers kill their driver, steal their horses, and take all their food and money. They are forced to continue their journey to freedom by foot. The terrain is rocky and dry, and the air is unbearably cold at night despite the immense heat during the day. Unable to sustain the harsh conditions, the mother dies. They have to leave her body. They travel by night and hide during the day. Often they would hear the boots of Ottoman soldiers pounding against the ground. Do not make a single sound. They will kill us, says the father. He should know. He watched them kill all 5 of his brothers. Finally, they reach Aleppo, Syria, where the father seeks refuge for his children in an orphanage. It is here they realize that they will never be welcomed in their country again. The 4-year-old boy is my great-grandfather Abraham, and this is my family story. So what is the Armenian genocide? While the world was distracted by World War I, the Ottoman Turks saw an opportunity to wipe out the Christian minorities, namely the Armenian, Greek, and Assyrian populations, in order to take over their lands and create one Turkish empire. Their pan-Turkic ideology pushed the idea for a Turkey for the Turks, establishing themselves as a superior race. This meant that anyone who did not fit that identity of a Turkish-speaking Muslim was viewed as subhuman, who had no place in their society. So thus the political of the Grey Wolves Party was formed and came to fruition with the intention to take care of the Armenian problem. We'll see this idea of a superior race and a political party confronting a race issue in the Holocaust a couple decades later. So committing genocide by definition means to systematically plan to exterminate or to destroy with intent, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, or religious group. So how do they plan for this? Well, first they dehumanize the Armenians by inciting stereotypes and microaggressions, and then by discriminating against them officially with written laws that denied certain rights. So with this growing hatred and rhetoric came violence and hate crimes, like vandalism, threats of assault, rape, until finally the Ottoman government unleashed their entire military with the task of silencing Armenians indefinitely. By 1923, 1.5 million Armenians were killed in historic Western Armenia. The Ottomans stole and continue to control those indigenous lands, which are now recognized as a part of Eastern Turkey. To this day, the Turkish government denies that the genocide ever happened, and they have not been held accountable by the international community. So here's a map to give you a quick visual. The red dots represent the massacre sites. The bigger the dot, the larger the volume of killings that occurred. The red lines represent the death march routes, which were often made up of women and children. And the black dots are the areas where they had concentration camps and deportation checkpoints. This darker beige outline symbolizes the historic Armenian borders, whereas the pink area shows the current Armenian borders. And as you can see, there's quite a difference. So as I mentioned, the genocide is a systematic and planned attack. So what the Ottomans did was start from the top down and targeted all of the elites of the Armenian community. This is known as eliticide, which refers to the killing of leadership, the educated, and the clergy of a group. So Armenians commemorate the genocide on April 24th every year, as this was the day when the killings of the Armenian elites occurred. Without its leaders, the people would be more or less defenseless and pushed into chaos. So one notable figure I want to talk about is Gomidas Vartabed, who is pictured here on the slide. He was the Archbishop of the Armenian Church in Constantinople and is considered a kind of Renaissance man, having contributed to Armenian music, art, literature, and theology. He was among the elites who were captured and sent to the death camps on April 24th. And while he ultimately survived the genocide, he suffered from severe PTSD, having witnessed unspeakable horrors, and was considered medically insane. The trauma that survivors face, as we know, often makes them not want to talk about it. Even when I was writing my short story, I had asked my grandparents to remember the details that their parents would tell them about the genocide, and they would say there are no details. They never spoke of it. But we all know that when words fail, art speaks, which brings me to my next question. How can a historical event be told through art? So the next slide shows 3 different portraits of Gomidas Vartabed painted by 3 different artists. Each painting is going to depict a different part of his story that I just shared with you. Now the slide is going to ask you to write a response in which I would like for you to reflect on the paintings and write what you see. So notice the progression of images. How does it speak to his story as a survivor? While you are viewing the paintings, I will also be playing one of his compositions in the background. So in order to respond to the prompt, you simply have to type in the answer here box. And that should pop up right now. So go ahead and observe. I'll give you about a minute. So again, notice the progression, what colors stand out, any symbols, expressions. Just write what you see. Okay, see about 12 responses. Go ahead and finish up whatever you're on. But just to show some of your responses, darkness, sadness, definitely. I think the music definitely adds a different layer to it all, for sure. Yeah, wonderful responses, everyone. So just go back here. Okay. So for me, what is most telling is actually the last portrait. Despite him being completely traumatized and insane, his cross is still visibly sitting on his neck, and he's still holding an instrument, which looks like the Armenian duduk. If I hide this one's over here, if you can see his cross and his instrument. He's still holding on to it. And I think that's really powerful because while the Turks have taken everything, they failed to take his faith and his music, which I really love. So this idea that faith and cultural connection survives, I think embodies the Armenian spirit as a whole. Despite being a displaced people and a diaspora that is spread throughout the world, Armenians remain steadfast in expressing their culture expression, especially through the arts. It is our ultimate revenge to survive and remember, which was the theme in 2015 when we commemorated the 100th anniversary of the genocide. So as I mentioned before, growing up, I was involved in an Armenian dance group called Shushi. It's a name that comes from an Armenian city that was liberated from the country of Azerbaijan the same year that the group was established in 1993, a fact that will be relevant later on. So for the 100th anniversary, our dance group traveled to Armenia to perform. And as promised, I'm going to show you one of our dances on the next slide. But before I show you, I want to go over some of the symbols that you will see in the dance to provide some context. Two of which are the Forget-Me-Not flower and the Genocide Memorial Dzidenagapert. So the Forget-Me-Not flower was the official emblem of the 100th year in remembrance, with each part of the flower representing something different. The black dot in the middle symbolizes our dark past, specifically 1915. The inner light purple petals represent the unity of the Armenian people in the present, and the outer dark purple petals symbolize the 5 continents where Armenians can be found, and thus a symbol of our future. The yellow center of the flower alludes to the actual memorial, representing eternity. So now the memorial is made up of 12 pillars, each of which represent the 12 lost provinces of Western Armenia, which are enclosed around an internal flame. The 44-foot statue next to it symbolizes our upwards future. So when you watch the dance, you'll see these symbols play out. So the name of the dance is called Remember, which is the name of the song that we danced to, which was composed by a famous Armenian composer named Ara Gevorkyan. We performed the dance in the capital city of Yerevan at the Opera House, and it was really a powerful experience. So as you watch the dance, there will be a slideshow in the background, which will show images of the genocide as well. So now I will ask you to make sure that you guys are muted, make sure that you've muted yourself, and you can click the button, click the link that's on the slide to watch the dance. It'll be about 4.5 minutes, and you may begin whenever you want. So you should be wrapping up by now. I'll give everyone a couple more seconds. Okay. So I think you should be finished watching by now. And now on this next slide, I'm going to ask you to describe your reactions. So again, in that response box, what do you think or feel about the dance, the music? How is the story being told? How are the symbols playing out? So definitely sadness, definitely powerful. Oh, the flower being a symbol of protection. I love that. Emotional yet empowering, anger. Absolutely. The movement across the stage. Yep. Definitely a very horrible scene to portray. Absolutely. I remembered when we first started to practice this dance, it was actually really uncomfortable. I mean, to put yourself in that state mentally and physically, there were definitely, I'm embarrassed to say, but a few nervous laughs amongst my friends and I during practice. So my next question for you is, how can you cultivate passion or interest in a topic that is uncomfortable or controversial? Now, the short answer is it takes time and you have to build up to it. The experience I had of the first time dancing Remember in comparison when we performed it on stage were two very different experiences for me. I went from a nervous laugh at practice to sobbing tears on stage. Now, I know genocide is a heavy topic that you may not feel equipped to handle to cover in a classroom. And if you don't have a personal connection to it like I do, you may feel like it's not your place to speak on it, to speak on someone else's oppression. But as educators, we often get accused of pushing an agenda on our students. And topics that surround race can definitely fall under that category. But to that end, I want to make it very clear that a topic like race and genocide are not one of politics, but of human rights. It was clear from your responses that the dance provoked an emotional response and evoked a feeling of empathy. These are the key components to cultivating passion. So yes, it is uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean if you ignore it, it goes away. Our duty as educators is to prepare our students to be socially conscious citizens. And the threat of genocide is very real to the Armenians now as it was 100 years ago. Just this past year, the Armenian people in the Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh were attacked. The region known as Artsakh to Armenians, which is the home of the city of Shushi, which is what my dance group is named after, is indigenous to the Armenian people. And yet Azerbaijan claims it as a part of their country. Azerbaijan has ignored the people's right to self-determination to be recognized as an independent republic, and the territory has long been an area of conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But like the genocide, this goes deeper than just a dispute over land. Azerbaijan calculated this attack on September 27th with the support of Turkey and under the guise of a global pandemic. Sound familiar? Azerbaijan did not attack military units, but rather civilian areas, churches and schools, and even a PPE factory. Anti-Armenian rhetoric and Armenophobia are very prevalent in Azerbaijan today, where Armenians are constantly discriminated and violated against. They're not even allowed in the country. And actually, it was just last year or the year before, Henrik Mkhitaryan, who plays for the soccer team AS Roma, was not allowed to enter the country to play in the championships games because of his Armenian background. So it's a very, very real and current problem. Now, going back to our definition of genocide, the first step is dehumanization. I have here a list of examples of the types of attitudes, crimes, and threats Armenians from all over the world, not just in Armenia, but from all over the world, have faced just in this last year. Now, this does not make up a quarter of the crimes that they have committed, but I do want to bring your attention to the first bullet point, because I think this one personally got me the most. A video of an Azerbaijani kindergarten class was circulating over the internet, in which the teacher was pointing to Armenia on a map and said, "This is the enemy. What do we do with the enemy?" And the children would reply, "We kill them. We make sure they go away." Armenians have spent a century trying to rebuild their national identity and preserve their culture, all of which is being threatened again. Now, it would be controversial to define this current attack as an act of genocide. But given the facts and history, it is certainly a discussion worth having. As a teacher, I wouldn't want to impose my own opinions, but rather allow my students to come up with their own based on the facts. So I'll let you make that judgment. Here is a list where I have created, where I've compared some of the elements from 1915 to 2020. And I'll just give you a few moments to look it over yourself. Definitely are similarities. So now this next piece is a performance by a man named Sevag Avenisian. So after the bombing of the Cathedral of the Holy Savior, which is the cathedral in the city of Shushi, he played a piece by Gomidas Vartabed in response. It is actually the same piece that I played for you earlier. I will again ask you to pay attention to how the story is being told. You may click on the link and watch the video. Please make sure that you are muted. Okay, you should just be about wrapping up. I will again ask you to record your observations, your reactions. What do you think or feel about the piece, the musician, or the setting? Mm, definitely a lot of pain, destruction. Mm, an act of defiance. I like that. A guttural cry of desperation. Absolutely. I do encourage you, those who are more musically inclined, to explain it in more music discourse. Definitely very haunting and mournful, somber, painful. Yep. hmm Intense beauty, a lot of cry and mourning. It is the first piece that I played, yep. And a consistent tone. Legacy. Very nice. So now our final question for this evening. What opportunities can teachers provide for students to engage in meaningful and authentic tasks? So basically, how do we bring this all together? Now, this is where teaching for inclusivity comes to play. Inclusivity is one of those educational buzzwords that simply means to include content within our class curriculum that highlights the voices and stories of marginalized groups. The fact that most of you are artists is so beautiful to me because your passion is to create content, and to create means using our emotions. It can be both therapeutic for ourselves as well as used as a strong communication tool to others. So, ways that we can create opportunity in the classroom. For me, it might be an essay or presentation topic, which I've done myself as a student, narratives, poetry, writing. For you, it could be song selections or use of instruments, artistic movements, the importance of symbols. Overall, your ultimate goal should be for your students to take something away from your lesson. You have just shared a piece of culture with them that they now have a sense of ownership over, and therefore are more likely to are more inclined to be aware of those marginalized groups. This effect can be reached through a very simple or a very elaborate task. So to give you an example of a simple task, this is art that my students in my Armenian club produced. So actually, when the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict had first began, I had many students at school who felt this secondhand trauma. They felt helpless in their efforts to support our people in Armenia and didn't really know what to do. So one thing I did with them actually on MLK Day, very fitting, was to create collages of their thoughts on social justice. Now, I know these aren't going to be hung in a museum anytime soon, but the fact that I think it's beautiful that essentially anyone can be an artist, especially in our world of digital age. But the most beautiful part of this entire project was how we engaged in conversation. So we engaged in conversation about the conflict, about their feelings, how they can spread awareness, and how they can speak about it to their non-Armenian friends. For us, we grew up only hearing the stories. We never actually gone through it. So this was something definitely very new for them and for myself. So to even have had this time where we did this together was really powerful and really therapeutic, as well as a strong message. I know one of the girls posted this, the first picture on her social media as part of her campaign of awareness. Now, in an effort to model a more elaborate task, I am going to teach you now a special Armenian hymn. So this hymn, which translates to Lord have mercy, is played during the part of the Armenian church service where we actually honor the genocide martyrs. This version of the hymn in particular was composed by Gomidas Vartabed pre-genocide. As I said, he was a renowned musician and he composed an entire new set of music for the Armenian church service. These files and recordings were found hidden in the church, which the Armenians were able to get rid of after the genocide. So first what I will do is I will go over the words so that you can hear the pronunciation and for you to repeat back to me. I will also play the melody so that you know what it sounds like. And then we will finally all sing it together. So I invite you all to unmute your mics now. I know it's a little strange over Zoom, but it's okay. We learn in the uncomfortable. So we are only singing this first verse, Lord have mercy. And the words say, dir, vo,
Der,
dir,
Dare,
vo,
Vo,
o,
gor,
gor,
mia,
ja,
ja,
dir,
der,
der,
vo,
vo,
o,
gor,
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 mia.
mia.
mia,
Awesome. So all together, dir, vo, gor, mia.
der,
Der vo
gor,
gor
mia.
Perfect. So now I'll play the melody so that you can hear it. For you music people, I hope know that we can read music, but just for us that need the sound, let me play the first verse. Okay. So that's the melody. And now I invite all of us to sing together. Dr. Freeman as Vaughn as our musical director, correct?
Well, Sin is the music director, but
Yes,
You want to count us down to it?
Sin,
sure.
you can go ahead.
Thank
Cool.
you.
1, 2, 3, and 4. Der,
Ja, ja,
Thank you.
That was beautiful.
I think so. Good job, guys. That really was. I know it's a little choppy over Zoom, but still very, very powerful. So as we wrap up here, I want to summarize some of my final points for you to take away. My first point is that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So of my 3 years of teaching, I can tell you that you will have days where you will cry and think that your efforts for inclusion and making a change are going over your students' heads. I ask that when you feel like giving up, to remember that there is a kindergarten teacher out there who is promoting division. So don't let her win. Second, we all have a story to tell. So before you can ask your students to share their stories, make sure that you know how you want to share yours and model it. Third, when it comes to teaching a topic to your students that you are passionate about, you're going to want to include everything. And it can be very uncomfortable, but it is important to take the first step and initiate the conversation. From then you can start planning. And finally, when words fail, art speaks. The last art piece I'll share with you tonight is the image I have on this slide. It's a painting that depicts those who died for their faith and homeland. And while it's a painful reminder of how many innocent souls were lost, the halos around their head speaks to how their death was not in vain and are forever honored as the new saints of the Armenian Church. It's a reminder that their souls live on in us, and we must continue to provide our voices in their stead. If you would like more information on this topic, I've provided some outlets for you to follow. You can actually click right on your screen and they should take you to the websites, which I think was really cool with Coming Pear Deck. And with that, I would like to say thank you all again. I really appreciate you coming out here tonight. I know that every day we're sort of stuck in front of our computers, so I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this very important topic. And I'd like to answer any questions you may have. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So you can actually type your question on the Pear Deck if you'd like, or you can say it in person. Oh.
Yeah, it's easier.
Sure, no problem.
First of all, thank you so much. That was enlightening and very powerful, emotionally very powerful. Though I am connected to the topic as a fellow Armenian, I think to this, which is for those who are not, how do we bridge to empathy? I think you started to talk about art as a kind of a universal way to elicit empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder too about how we find a way to elicit in others their parallel experiences,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can feel the same emotions that we feel, that they can truly see that they too have suffered and that no suffering deserves to be elevated above any other suffering, but that because we have a common experience of suffering, we can all understand each other's suffering. How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important, especially as kind of to invoke for all of us to have this feeling of empathy. It's hard. One thing that I do when it comes to the genocide specifically, I often, and again, not to compare, but to show the similarities between the genocide and the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's so many parallels there. That was also under the guise of World War II. There was also this superior race notion. There was also a political party and a dictator in a whole country. So oftentimes to use that and to say we both went through something like this so horrific.
Mm-hmm.
I know every year at the genocide protests we have in Times Square, there'll be speakers survivors of the Rwandan genocide who have come and have spoken, and they share our pain. Yeah, they share our pain and they speak on their own, and we help each other out, and even the last couple of weeks with the war, I've seen so many other Armenians posting on social media and going to other protests for other marginalized groups. I know a lot of my friends went to the Black Lives Matter protest, because we all feel this same idea, the same concept of oppression and emotional trauma. And I think definitely if we can speak to that to show that really we're not all that different, that idea of equality can be better reached in our classrooms and hopefully throughout the world. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Anyone else?
Ms. Apanosian, there's a question about,
Yeah.
are there any ways we can help from here with the current issues going on in Armenia today? I don't know if you see that question, but it's been posed.
Yep, I just saw it. Yeah, so I mean, there are definitely so many ways to what we have been doing is campaigning, right? Spreading awareness has been our biggest thing. Certainly events such as this to talk about it, having the opportunity to speak on it. You know, I get alerts on my phone from the ANCA, the Armenian National Committee of America, asking me to send emails to my local representatives, urging them to recognize Artsakh and to send humanitarian aid to Armenia. So definitely in that we can help. I think it's difficult because we're trying to marry the political with the emotional and the awareness. But certainly, I mean, ways that we can help, we'll keep advocating. It's hard because I feel like that's what we've been doing our whole lives, and now it's almost you know, this is still happening, and it's like, well, are our efforts even really mattering? I think they are. I think that we're still helping the individual people there in Armenia, certainly sending, whether it's through donations or humanitarian aid packages. I mean, just keep spreading awareness. I think it's a current event. And again, we can use this to, we can compare it to other issues that we're even facing in our country. Right, because it's as an Armenian, as a non-Armenian, you know, why I guess would you want to help? It's like, well, if you can help over here, then hopefully, you know, more people can help you over here. Again, it's that idea that we're all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as well as all those links again that I have posted over here, those are also ways that you can help.
Hello, Ms. Apanosian, it's Dr. Freeman again. Hatred for a peoplehood often begins with a lie. And that lie grows and spreads over generations and over millennia. And as a Jewish person, I know that there have been centuries of lies that have grown and spread throughout the world, which has created terrible racism toward the Jewish people. And it's a very hard thing to talk about, but I'm wondering if you can help us understand what that lie was that caused the hatred toward the Armenian people. Was there something that started it?
So from my understanding, because Armenia as a country was established before Turkey was, and established also before Azerbaijan was, well before. And from my understanding was that when the Turkic people migrated over to these areas, they didn't really have a language, they didn't really have any kind of national identity. I know that's actually a big thing going on in Azerbaijan currently. They feel that they don't really have a national identity, and they're trying to establish that for themselves. And I think it, similar to how language is created, right? We borrow words and we borrow roots from other cultures and other languages to form our own. And again, from my understanding, what I know is that when the Turkic people came, the Armenians had initially helped them. the Armenians, the Assyrians, the Greeks, we all lived together in this region. And the stories that were told to me in Armenian school was this jealousy that we had our own country, that we had our own language, that we were good business people, that we were, good in, we had so many intellectuals, scientists, inventors, whereas the Turk people didn't have that. It's not, I think it's telling in when they are destroying cultural artifacts, when they're destroying the literature, when they're destroying the artwork, destroying the churches, because that's kind of what they don't have. Or they're rewriting it so that it's as if they came up with it. I know in Azerbaijan, currently there are campaigns online, they're rewriting, they're saying that some of the areas that were indigenous to the Armenians were actually Albanian or something. They're trying to discredit. So I think it definitely stems from an area of jealousy that they're unable to attain. So they just kind of destroy and essentially steal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that same kind of jealousy is a target for the Jewish people in different times, and it's a very tragic thing, isn't it? Because your people, my people, many peoples want to reach out and to help and to include, to be inclusive, to be sharing, to be welcoming, and when jealousy and greed take over, then that sense of collaboration is completely destroyed and it turns into hate and violence. And I would venture to say this happens in many different cultures.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for explaining that to us. That's very important for us to know.
Thank you for asking. Any other questions?
Hi, it's Dr. Freeman again.
Yes, Dr. Freeman.
I want to thank you so much for giving us this presentation, and I want to be your colleague in this moment and ask an educator's question and pose a question to people in the audience this evening. First, I want to thank everyone for attending, but I want to ask the audience, what are you going to take away from this presentation? What visualization or moment or historic fact or artifact are you always going to remember? What do you want to take away and research more and study more? What is leaving an indelible impression on you? And I open that up to everyone who is here this evening.
I think a couple of things. I think.
Who you are first.
Oh, Senny Rains.
Hi, Senny.
All right. I think the main thing that I took away from this is like Miss Vani said, that we're not so different, right? We have, although we do have our differences, we're all still human and we all still go through our struggles, and that should never be a reason to hurt anybody else. Like my mom always says this because she teaches at Rutgers University, like human diversity and social justice and things of that nature. And she would always tell her class that difference is good, but the problem is when you make a difference about the difference, right? And so that's one of the main things that I took away from this. Also, another thing that I took away from this that was really like shocking to me is just the fact that you have people out here who are talking to 4 or 5-year-olds, telling them to kill people who they don't even know, who they've never experienced, and you're just implanting all of these harmful seeds at such a young age, which just goes to show you how early the seeds of hatred can be implanted in people. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy that you brought that up. It really is disturbing to see how that is ignited in their brains at that young of age. I know that especially with the territory of Artsakh, there was actually a war 30 years prior. So what analysts are saying now is that the Azerbaijani side had lost that first war, and Armenia had liberated those territories again, but that was 30 years ago. So essentially, over the last 30 years, they've been planning for this moment. And again, how? They're starting off with the stereotyping, with the microaggressions, things just, kids just as young as 4 and 5 years old. And they have this deep, deep hatred. There were a few things going around during the war, during this last conflict, that like an Armenian's head is worth $100. Yeah, it's really vile. And like the harassment that we received online, there was definitely another layer too, because of the psychological warfare with social media being a huge outreach, that now you're having these videos circulate to instill fear, even from over here, even from, again, and I think there's a misconception when it comes to the Middle East, is that like, oh, well, things like that happen over there, right? All the time. No, it doesn't. It shouldn't. Like you said, Sunny, it's these are humans still. We all feel the same way. Doesn't matter what part of the world they're from. But even so, that hatred has spread throughout the United States. I mean, there were stabbings in California. Schools were being vandalized. Schools were being, vandalized with essentially the same rhetoric and the same symbols, like the swastika is being painted on Armenian school, churches in France and Israel. I mean, so many reports. I think what's shocking also is how far the outreach of that hate also comes. And I think social media has a lot to do with it, this mass communication tool that we have. So I don't know, it's a force, it's two forces out here, where we're here, half of us are trying to promote equality and equity and inclusivity, and the other half here is way on the other side. It's as tale as old as time, right? Good versus evil.
Yeah. Hello. I have a question.
Oh, yes.
You're basically talking about all of this like pain that exists out there, and even now is basically what I'm trying to address. I want to know like how you deal with that and this like trauma that has been passed down throughout like the legacy of this in your family. How do you deal with that on like a daily basis when you're confronted with these things? And how do you just manage that, massive amount of hurt that it's still causing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before the war, we definitely felt as a community a sense of intergenerational trauma, right? And how we dealt with it was simply to be involved in our communities, right? Going to dance classes, going to church on Sundays, going to Armenia to volunteer. I think we tried to overcome that pain by using it to do something good, right? But I will say that for this time, like I said, I'd mentioned before, this isn't intergenerational anymore. This is just trauma, and it was very dark for a while. Still is, for sure, but when we were in the midst from like September until November, those 2 months were just a very, very dark period. I think it comes in waves, right? Comes in phases. It's the stages of grief. So how I deal with it now, I think the biggest thing that we've done as a community as a whole is that instead of playing into the hatred, instead of them saying, I hate you, and me saying, I hate you too, right? We're trying to put our efforts and our energy into going into creating meaning or creating valid approaches to deal with the situation. Like the root of the problem is that, you know, X, so me talking badly about you is not going to help us get to that goal. Right. And I think it's just this constant reminder. I think we all remind each other. I think as a community, I mean, the Armenian community has definitely united like on a crazy amount, supporting each other, you know, where it's like, you're like one big family. And I think that's what has helped. So one day you might feel really badly, but somebody else will come, you know, will come to you and say, hey, it's okay, we'll get through this. And then vice versa. I think unity has really been our strength and our way to deal with the pain. You know, two heads are better than one sort of way. Of course, we still get angry. Of course, there's still pain. But as a whole, I think we remember that it's important that in order to reach a place where we want to be, we kind of have to keep our heads a little bit. We can deal with the emotion maybe later, but right now, here's the problem and we got to deal with it now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do you have one, Mr. Sarajian? Oh. Oh, you're leaving. Okay, bye. This reminds me of my afternoon classes where everyone just like stares at each other, not say anything. But no worries.
Sometimes it is nice to be together in solidarity and in quiet. There is so much noise in the world and in our day-to-day lives. And for us all to come together, different ages, different cultures, different viewpoints, and to just sit together for a moment in the quiet and to just be together, reaching across our cultures and just to affirm each other in this moment. It's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. I guess I'll ask actually to everybody, did anyone else feel with this idea that we all have this shared similar experience, did anyone else maybe see their cultures play out when during the presentation? Or any kind of connection or parallel that you saw? I'm just curious.
I mean, I am Armenian, so I can, but I'm Anashe. I am Armenian, but it actually made me realize even more so that we're all similar, like everyone's going through something. Mm-hmm. It was BLM, and you know, if the world has empathy, you know, attack on one is an attack on everyone. It's just a matter of time, and you know, we just got to do what's right on the human race. So that actually brought out more what I thought about. Hey, we need to. I'm Armenian, so obviously this cause is very important to me. This information is important to me, but there's also, you know, part of it that we don't know a lot about other genocides of other groups that we do need to be aware about. So I think as a whole, we need to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I would also like to add to that. I'm Jewish, and a lot of my ancestors were in the Holocaust, actually all four of my grandparents. And obviously this is a very touchy subject for me as well. And I think it's really important for people to understand that there are a lot of different cultures that go through situations such as, obviously they're all different, but I think it is important that you do, and this presentation made me kind of also, I guess just like have more of like an open mind to every single different culture, and then realizing that even though we have to like obviously stick with our own culture and like be supportive for it, like we also need to realize every other culture goes through things like this, and it's important just to like also support everyone else and like be open to listening about everyone else's cultures and learning. And I think it's just important to learn about it all and be aware.
Definitely. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, it definitely allows you to be very reflective, I think. And I agree. I mean, there's so many other genocides and so many other issues that could lead to genocide. You know, maybe it's not genocide yet, but like I said, this conflict was brewing over a course of 30 years. The Turks and the Armenians, it was brewing over thousands of years. So to try to nip it in the bud while we can, I think is really important to try to avoid it reaching to that point of genocide. So identifying and being aware of those characteristics that lead to an ultimate genocide, because no one wakes up one day and decides like, oh, I hate this group of people and I'm gonna go kill them, right? It takes planning and it's very calculated. And again, things like dehumanization, microaggressions. So really important. And as educators, and even if you're not an educator, but just as a human, to have these engaging conversations. Even before I was a teacher, I talked about this a lot. I think a lot of Armenians have. I think a lot of people from other groups have spoken about their struggles. You know, definitely that one-on-one connection is important just as much as it is to connect in a classroom of 30 kids. And yes, so while a kindergarten classroom is being taught to hate at 5 years old, we can teach our kindergarten classrooms and our toddlers to love and accept each other, to instill that idea in their heads, to avoid any kind of brainwashing later on.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, Miss Massich, you're still muted, I think. Oh, you're still muted. That's so sad. Do you want to type it in the chat?
One more thing, I'll just add in quick. As I'm Vani's colleague, I'm also a teacher at Pascack Hills, English and special ed as well. And even as she's saying, like, it's very important to teach to, say, 5-year-olds about all of this, a lot of times I think that it is absent in a lot of students at the high school level as well. And I know I definitely see that, especially like with a lot of my students. There's just a lot of, I think, I want to say like association versus what is like true, what is not true. And they just kind of say what, you know, maybe like their parents say, or maybe what they hear, or even from peers. So I think it is really important to address this also on a high school level, not just elementary. Yeah.
Absolutely. High school kids can be mean. Oh. Here we go. If I can read it out loud. As a supervisor of the art and English department in a high school district, I really appreciate the way that art has been a way to protest, educate, and help strengthen a people. And more specifically, learning about Armenian artists and music of which I was unaware. I think students can really benefit from this. Yeah, I think a really great way, and this is something when we were doing our courses last year with Dr. Freeman with the Holocaust, I think a really great way to teach and to even have those conversations to open up is by talking about one specific person, one story, one narrative, not to the point where we have a danger of a single story where we only represent that one person, right? We can't just talk about Anne Frank when we talk about the Holocaust, but certainly to have that connection, that story. Music and art definitely does that. That's why I, if you notice, tried to talk about Gomidas Vartabet a lot as that kind of one figure between the music, between the art, and then his story, how it all connects. one of my teachers had said that, you know, he could be in a history class, he could be teaching the facts, and it might go over a kid's head real quick, but then he can show a dance, an art, a musical piece, and that will speak to the kid. And that's what's going to make that student be aware and to and educate and help them learn. So it's all about how, I guess, you spread that message. And music and art definitely, I think, are ways that are interactive. They're, you know, it speaks to everyone. It's its own language. All right. So I really enjoyed this. I hope you all did as well. Dr. Freeman, I don't know, it's been about an hour we've been here, and I apologize for the technical difficulties in the beginning, but I am glad it worked out.
Me too. And as a teacher would say, sometimes the hidden curriculum is just as important as the presentation material. And the hidden curriculum this evening was that in a difficult situation, you managed everything, you handled everything with poise and with patience. And you modeled something very important for us all going forward, that in our lives, if we can model poise and patience with ourselves and with each other, that will create more bridges between people. It's those little things that can make such a difference. And if we can practice that a little bit every day, particularly with someone new in our lives, someone who looks different than us, someone who speaks a different language, someone who might, at first glance, might seem a little scary to you, but by showing a smile and poise and patience the way you did this evening, we can create bridges between people and cultures and nations. And on behalf of the College of the Arts, on behalf of the Cali School of Music and the Musicians for Social Justice, Ms. Vani Apanosian, I thank you very, very much for working so hard to create a beautiful, thoughtful, meaningful, and memorable program. Thank you so much. And thanks to our lovely audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Dr. Freeman. Thank you to all of you. Oh, thank you. Definitely something that I'm passionate about, and I love to talk about it any chance that I can. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm just wondering if someone from the MSJ board wants to add a little comment or a thanks.
Well, I'm Vaughn. I'm the VP and Executive Secretary. I just want to say thank you, Ms. Afanosian, for your wonderful presentation. And thank you, Dr. Freeman. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate it. I think there was some more questions, but I don't know if you want to direct them to you personally and answer them later, or?
Well, yeah, is that okay, Ms. Apanosian?
Sure, yeah.
What is the best way to reach you?
I mean, I can hang on back for a few minutes still.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to direct some questions to me, I have an email through the college, of course, at Freeman, Freemanta, freeman@montclair.edu. I will then pass them on to Ms. Apanosian, and that could be a way also.
I can also add in my email as well.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
There we go.
And thanks again to the Board for Musicians of Social Justice. You have been working beautifully and diligently and collaboratively to put this together. And
yes,
I thank you so much for your great work.
Thank you.
I just got to add something as well too. I would like to thank Ms. Apinosine again and Dr. Freeman for helping us set up this amazing workshop. If you guys want to donate to help us provide you guys with more workshops and events for the future, I'm going to leave our donation information in the chat. So we have a Venmo. You can just Venmo it as Musicians for Social Justice, and then we also have a PayPal. I'm going to leave the information once again in the chat.
Thank you, Nick. And speaking of inclusivity and building bridges, the MSJ has 2 days to honor Black History Month. And I believe the dates are February 26th and 27th.
Yes.
We have, it's a 2-day festival. Vaughn, do you want to speak to that for just a moment?
Sure. So last year we just had a gala. We had like an art gallery, like pre-show, and then we had a concert. So this year, since everything is virtual, we will have it'll be kind of like a live, like an IG, Instagram live virtual art show. So we will have our director of outreach, Marcos Rivera. He will be hosting from our page, and we will have visual artists who have agreed to participate, and they will actually paint or like do their graphic work live on our Instagram. And that will happen on Friday at 2 p.m. and also Friday at 4 p.m. and then as well on Saturday at 2 p.m. In addition to that, Friday at about 6 p.m., I believe, we're still working on finalizing that time. Gabby Mills, she will lead a talk, educational talk about Black history and how influential Black performing artists have impacted, the music industry. And then Saturday evening at 7:30, we will live stream our Black History Month concert. And I believe that'll be via YouTube. And we will have info on how to get your tickets and just register for that soon.
Great. Thank you, Vaughn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We've also dropped our website link into the chat as well.
Thank you.
And our social media info. So yes, thank you all for joining us. This was an amazing workshop. I really appreciate you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shat Shanahagalem.
Chantrem.
Also, our president, Micaela Guzman, she wants to thank everyone for coming. She's not able to speak right now, but she has been watching and she has enjoyed this presentation. So, yes.
All right.
All right.
Let's hang out.
Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe. Stay well.
Yes, have a great evening.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you for inviting us, Dr. Freeman. Thank you to everyone on the MSJ board. Very impressive, wonderful work.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Gregory.
Hajo Chuchun.
Hacho Plutun means be well. She's really pretty. Right.